Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing with you all of the books that I read during the winter season. So this would include the months of November, December, and January. So I'm going to be giving an overview of everything that I read and then talking about my best and worst books. But first, we have a sponsor for today's video, Skillshare. So Skillshare is an online learning community where millions come together to take the next step in their creative journey, with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, and more. Whether you're wanting to learn a new skill or improve on one you already have, Skillshare has so many different workshops that you can take part in. One of the ones that I was particularly interested in were the ones about Adobe Lightroom. This year, one of my resolutions was to really up my Instagram game and try to make a very nice, cohesive feed and take beautiful pictures and edit them. And the app that I have been using to edit all of my Instagram photos is Adobe Lightroom. I really like it, but there are so many things that you can do with it. So on Skillshare, there are workshops that you can take to learn Lightroom. I'll leave a link to the specific one that I did. It covered everything from filter style to layout to how to create presets. So I have a link in the description where you can get a 2-month free trial for the premium membership to try it out, see if you like it. Now on to my wrap up. I just want to go over a couple of stats before we get into everything else. So in the months of November, December, and January, I read a total of 28 books. 3 of those were young adult and everything else was adult. 21 of them were adult romance and the rest were some other genre. So I really read so much romance. It partly has to do with the fact that I signed up for Kindle Unlimited and I did a couple of those Kindle Unlimited videos, and in those I read a lot of books. Only 8 of them were books that I own physically, the rest were ebooks, which I don't love that number because I'm really trying to read the books that I own. Didn't do a great job doing that, but again, that really comes down to the fact that I just read so many Kindle Unlimited romances, which I'm trying to scale back on a little bit. As fun as they are, I need to let them not completely take over my life. So I'm going to quickly just show you an overview of all of them. So first we'll start with the physical books that I read and what I rated them. Starting with The Beautiful by Renee Attier, 5 stars. This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El Motar and Max Gladstone, 5 stars. Priest by Sierra Simone, 3 stars. The Wives by Taryn Fisher, 1 star. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, 5 stars. The Guinevere Deception by Kirsten White, 4 stars. Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore, 4 stars. The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackworth, 5 stars. Now for the ebooks. I'm not going to go into every single one, but here is just an overview of all of the ebooks that I read. Again, most of them Kindle Unlimited books, and I have talked about the majority of these in different romance videos that I've done in the past couple of months. So yeah, I read a lot of smutty romance. I had a great time. The winter months tend to be the most stressful for me, so I really just wanted to relax, not read anything too serious. And I read a mixed bag of romance. But in terms of the non-romance books that I read, I have 3 that are my best, and they're not only my best of this season, but they're potentially my new favorite book. One of them is definitely my new all-time favorite book. Another one was my favorite book of 2019. It was just a really great batch of reading. And then I also have a book that I rated 1 star, and it's probably the worst book that I've read in a very long time. So we'll start with, I actually have one notable mention that I feel like I just can't not talk about it. So that is Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. I honestly don't know how I feel about this book anymore. As soon as I finished reading it, I gave it 5 stars because honestly, I read this series for Jude and Carden and nothing else. I don't care about any of the other characters. I don't care about the plot. I don't care about the world. I was just there for Jude and Carden. And I feel like the Jude and Carden relationship that I wanted was delivered. So I gave it 5 stars. Do I think it's a 5-star book? No, I don't. I think that in terms of plot, it was the weakest of the 3. There were a couple things that I really didn't like, particularly being one of the off-page deaths that happened. I thought was kind of lame, but overall, it gave me what I wanted out of the book. So I did lower my rating to 4 stars. It's definitely my least favorite of the 3. I just wanted to mention that because people have been asking me what I thought about it. So now we have my 3 best books that I read. These 3 books just gave me everything that I wanted. One of them I haven't talked about on my channel at all yet, so let's start with that, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. So this is a post-apocalyptic book that follows a traveling Shakespeare troupe who travel around the Great Lakes, putting on Shakespeare performances. It jumps around pre and post-apocalypse. What was really cool about this was we're following this troupe and they'll come across something, whether it's like a comic book or a dog or like something, and then you flash back to pre-apocalypse and you see that thing or that person or some sort of connection. So the pre-apocalypse storyline pretty much revolves around this famous actor who dies on stage performing in a Shakespeare play. His death was very shocking, and we're following points of views of people who were close to him before the apocalypse happens. So like you're following one of his ex-wives and a paparazzi guy who was there when he died. And all of those storylines that you're reading about pre-apocalypse have threads and connections to things that happen post-apocalypse. While you're following one of the child actors who was on stage with him when he died, she is now grown up and working in this Shakespeare troupe that's traveling around. So everything is connected and interwoven, and like some things you don't find out how they connect until way later. Some things are very obvious how they connect. It's just so masterfully done, and I knew that I was gonna love this because it combines two of my favorite things that I love in books, which is post-apocalypse and Shakespeare inspiration. And this was just great. It was incredible. I'm like mad at myself that I've owned this for so long, and it took me until now to read it. So the next one was my favorite book of 2019, and I talked about this in my best books of 2019 video, and that is This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. This is a very strange book to explain. I've explained it so many times at this point, and I still feel like I do a bad job. It's sci-fi, it's very hard sci-fi, but it's where sci-fi and literary fiction and poetry and romance like meet in the middle. It's a very weird mixture of things that probably shouldn't go together, but do. It's very lyrical, very poetic, and it follows these two opposing time war agents who come from alternate futures. One of them is a very tech-heavy future where people and machinery have kind of become one. And the other future is a very nature-based future where people and nature have become one. Both of these time-traveling agents, their job is to go back in time and implement things in history to make certain that their opposing futures is the one that happens. Stay with me. It's very confusing, I know. So both of these agents have been basically like circling each other in this kind of cat and mouse game. They're both trying to outdo one another and get to certain historical spots before the other. They're both women, but they're also not entirely human. I have compared this to Killing Eve, which to me I think is just like, I'm a genius. It's definitely very reminiscent of the dynamic in Killing Eve. Like the best thing about this book is that it is almost entirely told in letters that they leave each other. And these letters start out as very antagonizing, very much like poking the bear and trying to intimidate the other. And slowly through their time writing these letters and going head to head, they develop a very deep appreciation for one another. They realize that this is the closest relationship that they have with anybody. It's the closest bond that they have with anybody, and that bond turns into love, and the letters start to become love letters. It's just so beautiful. This is definitely one of the most romantic books I've ever read. It's really cool too because they're traveling back in time to different points in history, and it's cool seeing like, oh, they went to like Egypt when the pyramids are being built and they did this thing. It's so cool. I will say this is one of those books that I can totally understand why people wouldn't like it. It's very strange, and the writing style is very hard to get into. It's super abstract and lyrical. I feel like this is one of those books that like you have to have a very vivid imagination because things just aren't spelled out for you. You really have to fill in the blanks and figure things out. I could even be wrong about a lot of my interpretations because it's very much like, it's so lyrical and poetic. There's so many different things in here that could be interpreted many different ways. Not the romance though. It's definitely romance. So yeah, I just thought this was brilliant and beautiful. I cannot wait to reread it. I feel like this is one of those books that I'm gonna love even more when I reread it because I'm not gonna be focusing so much on like what is happening and I can just enjoy it for what it is. And then my last best book I have an entire video dedicated to how much I love this book, and my love for this book grows every single day. This is probably my new all-time favorite book, and that is The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. So this book is about a library in hell where all unfinished stories go. So when anyone writes a story and they don't complete it, it ends up in this library. The main character, Claire, is the librarian who is charged with taking care of all of these unfinished books. Sometimes the characters can escape those books and manifest as human-looking people because they desperately want their story to be finished. When they escape, their number one goal is to track down their author and get them to finish the book. But that's a very dangerous thing to happen, so Claire, when that happens, she does everything in her power to get the characters back into their book. So at the start of this, one of those characters has escaped and gone off after the author, and her apprentice go to Earth to find him. And while they're there, they come across an angel who is on a mission to find the Devil's Bible, which is a very dangerous dark book that belongs to Lucifer that has gone missing, and the angels in heaven really want that book so that it doesn't get into Lucifer's hands, and he thinks that Claire, being a librarian from hell, knows where the book is. So that kind of sets off a whole spiral of events. Claire and her group going off to find this book, and the angels chasing them to get the book. This was just hands down the coolest world I have ever read about. It takes place in our world, but most of it pretty much takes place in different afterlives. So one of the cool things is that it's not just heaven and hell. There are many different afterlives for many different beliefs, and all of these afterlives have gates that connect them, and people like Claire can travel in between them. So they do that, they travel in between to some different afterlives. One of the ones that they go to is Valhalla. This also had one of my favorite casts of characters. There was just this whole crew of people, and they were all so unique and fully fleshed out and realized. I loved them so much. I definitely feel like the closest thing I can compare this to is The Good Place. It's like The Good Place, but if The Good Place was a little bit less comedy and more drama, there were some really sad things and dark things that happened in here. So yeah, it's like The Good Place, but more drama than comedy. I could go on and on about this book, but I'll stop now. This was just amazing. I loved it so much. I cannot wait for the sequel. So now for my 1-star book, which is definitely the worst book I've read in a long time. We have The Wives by Taryn Fisher. This came as a very big shock to me because if you remember, anytime I talked about this book previously, I was very excited for it. I actually have a list of books that I think are going to be 5 stars, and this was one of those books on that list. Obviously, I was very off the mark on that one. So yeah, this is a thriller that is I feel even deceptive saying what it's about, because what the synopsis says it's about, that's not what it's actually about, but I'll tell you anyways. In theory, this is a thriller about a woman who shares her husband with 2 other women. He has 3 wives, and none of the wives know each other. They've never met. They just know that on this day, their husband is with one of the wives. On this day, the husband is with this wife. So we're following one of the wives named Thursday because her husband sees her on Thursday. And she one day finds something in her husband's pocket that leads her to investigate who these other wives are. So it takes her down this kind of rabbit hole of figuring out who these 2 other women that her husband are married to are, what is he doing when he's with them, what are the secrets he's keeping from them. That premise sounded so interesting to me. I had a very difficult time with this book because the first half of the book was what I just said it was, and I was loving it. I was like, yeah, this is gonna be 5 stars. And then we hit the 50% mark, okay? And there's something that's revealed, and I won't say what it is, but it is the most cliche, basic ass thing that you could do. If you can right now think of the most cliche thriller trope in the world, there's like 50% chance that you can guess what this one is. And I was very annoyed when that happened, but I thought, okay, it's 50%. This can't be like the big reveal. This is probably like a red herring, and it's trying to trip me up, make me think I don't know what's going on. So I kept going and I kept going, and I kept waiting for the second reveal, where it tells me that first reveal was fake. And then that never happened. And then it just kept getting worse, and it kept leaning more into the bad plot twist. I've never read a book that I thought had so much potential and then just like threw it all away. Like, this actually made me angry. It made me really, really angry because the trope that it uses, it's just one of those ones that I really hate. Pretty much the second half of the book was just like gaslighting bullshit. And I hate it. I hate that so much. And I just felt like the premise that we're sold on of this like polygamist husband who's got secrets and is being shady, that was just like bullshit. I think I'm coming to the conclusion that I don't like thrillers. I feel like one of my biggest issues with thrillers is that I want them to be horror. I just feel like thrillers, at least the ones that I've read, maybe you guys can recommend some to me, but the ones that I've read never go far enough. And it could be because I'm such a big horror fan that I'm like almost desensitized to horror at this point, that thriller just doesn't get me there. I always want it to go farther and be darker and be like sicker and like be more twisted. It might be a me problem. This book I don't think was a me problem. I just think this book sucks. Sorry if you like it. I know I have friends who really like this book. And that's cool because everyone's opinions are different. But yeah, with thrillers in general, I think it's a me problem because I just want them to be something else. Unless anyone can recommend me some thrillers that they think are just so twisted and messed up that the horror fan in me will still be satisfied. So those were my best and worst books from the winter season. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!